Hi there, it's Tom with Digital Foundry, and joining me today is John Linneman.
In the person,
yeah.
for the first time like ever that we're both on camera.
Yeah.
Where are we today?
We are at EGX Birmingham.
That's right.
And today, well, we came to see a whole bunch of games, but really we came with a mission to see the PlayStation 4 Pro.
That's right. Richard already got his hands on with it, so I think it was our turn now. So.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they didn't bring a whole lot.
We were kind of hoping a range of games, but in the end we got Call of Duty.
We got one. Yeah.
Yep.
Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, everybody's favorite game.
Yeah, indeed. Well, yeah.
No, so we rolled in there. We played it first on the PlayStation 4 while they set up the PlayStation Pro, and then we moved over to the Pro.
Which actually worked out quite well.
It did.
We got to see the before and after in a sense.
It turned out to be a nice A to B comparison.
Yeah. So let's go through that. We saw the multiplayer mode in PlayStation 4 first. It was a different map, and it looked great. I mean, some of the best depth of field effects we've seen in the series so far. It looked quite, really for all the criticism it was getting,
it's a nice looking game.
It is a nice looking game.
That's for sure.
But really, we were there to see the PS4
for the Pro.
And what it could do with the 4K mode, as we call it, though of course it's not really the native 4K.
And that's the thing. That was the big question I had. Is I really wanted to see what this thing was going to look like, actually in person. Like put your face up to the screen like this, and really get a feel for what you're actually seeing. And that's what was most interesting to me, because I think there was two takeaways from it. I mean, first, the native resolution thing, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, with checkerboard rendering, we're not really rendering at a native 4K. That's the whole thing, right? And as long as you, now, not that you're gonna do this, but if you stand still and look at the image, what you get basically is a native 4K image. It looks pixel to pixel, lined up with the pixel grid on the display.
Yeah, you even went up to
completely native.
You even went up to the screen to get a proper close-up with your
iPhone. I took a close-up photo of the screen grid, and you can actually see it maps out perfectly.
But that's in static mode.
Yep.
Now with Call of Duty, the image is always shifting left and right, and that's where we notice some sort of discrepancies in image quality that owe itself to the checkerboard rendering. And I think basically the look of checkerboard rendering is very distinctive. We've seen it in a couple of games so far. We've seen it in Mass Effect, I think Rise of the Tomb Raider as well.
I think they're doing it there, yeah. Some of Sony's games, right?
Horizon Zero Dawn definitely has that confirmed.
But we've only seen the videos, right?
Yeah, this is the first time
we've seen it in person.
In flesh. And, well, the best way to summarize it is it's a bit like an interlacing effect. Like, it's not as bad as
it does sound like combing artifacts would be horrible, but it's not like that. It's just a very subtle little bit of an edge on it that you see when you move.
Yeah, so I wasn't hugely bothered by it.
No.
There was...
and that's the thing, we were sitting close to these screens, right? It was 55-inch 4K displays, and we were like, our face was right there.
Yeah.
When we were standing back initially, I couldn't really make these issues out, but once you actually get close, you can see it.
Yeah, they put some decent 4K TVs in front of us, which is crucial for what we were really after, to see how this machine...
I don't think that's the thing. I don't think these TVs actually supported the HDR mode.
It'd be a shame if so, because you've seen HDR in action, and you were saying it doesn't look anything
does not look
like
that.
it.
No. That said, I mean, maybe it's just a bad implementation, but I really don't think it was running in that. In fact, we deduced from looking at the text artifacts that it was actually running in the 420 color mode. You could actually see half resolution artifacts on like red text elements where it was like actually pixelating up, which, from a normal viewing distance, not a huge problem, but up close, you could see it. But we're at such a high resolution,
it doesn't matter.
It's not a huge deal. And I think that's part of the takeaway for me is upscaling is not optimal because we use fixed pixel displays. You're scaling something up. The end results, if you take 900p to 1080p, it looks blurry. That's just how it is. When you're dealing with this many more pixels on a 4K screen, I've found, and I've tested this a lot recently with my PC.
Yeah, you got a new 4K display?
Yeah, I'm testing it on the 4K display. You can run some PC games at lower resolutions, sit back maybe 3 to 4 feet, and you can tell that it's not native, but it's close. And I think what the checkerboard rendering technique offers, to me at least, is that it doesn't look blurry in the same way. Like, I guess the edges still look sharp and well, there was no anti-aliasing here, but you had sharp pixels instead of blurry pixels, which is kind of a big difference from the typical upscaling that we're used to, right? And that's the difference. This was not blurry. This was sharp, but you could tell that the resolution was a little lower when you started to move the camera.
So there's another thing in play with Call of Duty
Yes,
on the
that's true.
Pro. I'm going with the temporal sort of AA. That produces some really obvious sort of banding effects behind moving objects. And to be honest, I think that's what got me more than the checkerboard artifact.
Yeah.
But generally, it looked like a really pristine image, and I was kind of...
It was really, really impressive.
Looking at those 4K screens and wondering, is this my time? Is this this something I need to go for? Because, like many people, you put the pre-order down for the PS4 Pro, but there's a real sort of issue with Sony's messaging on this, because there's not much of a push for what they're going to do with 1080p screen users.
And that's still what we're kind of waiting to see, right?
Yeah, so I'm on board with a lot of people at home, I'm sure, who just want to know what it does for, the standard full HD we've got already, whether that's a boost to the performance that would come inherently with the spec boost, or if it's, a graphical update. But in Infinite Warfare's case, we're kind of looking at, to be honest, something more on the conservative side. We're getting basically the same game as what we're getting on the standard PS4, but with the higher resolution.
Exactly.
And to be honest, I'm hoping maybe that translates to a super sampled image for when you're outputting at 1080p.
Users, hopefully.
But we can't, say for sure, because so far we've only seen it on 4K displays.
And I think this will be true for any, when the Xbox Scorpio hits as well, which should actually deliver more native 4K games. But in both cases, there's still going to be a lot of users that are running 1080p TVs.
Yes,
and I actually think super sampling is a big deal for those screens. And in fact, downsampling to 1080p could actually produce a more temporally stable image and sort of help eliminate or cover up some of the artifacts you get from the checkerboard rendering. If
you're, looking for the most pristine image quality, this might be the tactic to adopt. And I'm really keen to see what it does for 1080p screen users. But
one thing we noticed that was odd was when you looking at the static image, and it is basically a native 4K image.
Yes.
Yeah. There didn't actually appear to be any sort of anti-aliasing. It was very visible stair steps all through the image, which was kind of strange.
Yeah, it implies that they're using only the temporal AA, but nothing else for when you're seeing things in a static image. So, there's clear as day, just absolute stair steps all across. So I found that a bit odd. Maybe a sign of being an early code or something.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. And also the performance was a little bit slower on the PS4 Pro in spots we found. It was mostly 60 frames per second on both.
Yeah.
But when there was a lot of alpha effects in front of the screen, it kind of
You noticed that, and you raised the point, and I kind of came to the same conclusion independently. I was like, these drops really feel kind of, they're deeper drops.
They're deeper than what we saw in the regular PS4.
It's the usual, throw a grenade, explosion, the alpha-based stuff.
It seemed to last just long enough where you'd be like, this isn't quite right. But of course, the game is still, it's almost ready, but the PS4 Pro is pretty new, and we don't actually know how much time they've had to implement this, and we're just gonna have to wait and see. So it's something to think about that we'll be keeping an eye on.
So besides that, no visible graphical upgrades besides the 4K.
It basically looked identical. Adoption. I think they were both using, looked like 4x anisotropic filtering, which is kind of par for the course on a lot of games.
On this current gen,
so
well, we can say it is a good-looking game. But,
it's a good-looking game.
And they bundled that event in with a look at Modern Warfare Remastered.
Ah, yes, that was good.
So let's talk about that. They've got upgraded textures. It'd be interesting to see.
I think they redid all of the art.
It's a full revamp.
You can see when you go inside the buildings, they actually did full high-quality parallax occlusion maps on the bricks and the different textures that were much higher resolution than what could have been in the original.
And the color grading has been completely changed. This is one aspect I didn't like about the Modern Warfare Remastered. It felt too garish.
The colors were kind of strong, weren't it?
It might be the TV as ever with these events, but I was looking at it thinking, that's not really how I remember it. There
was a little bit of the battlefield, the blue-orange that you often see, the pleasing to the eye color combination, where you'd have flaming barrels with bright orange blooms around it, and then you look out and you kind of have like a deeper blue sky contrasting with it, and it did kind of have it was different. I thought it looked fine, but it did look different from atmosphere-wise, I suppose, compared to the original.
But I think it'll still scratch that nostalgic itch. Yeah, people going into that were really hyped, and I think, especially with the crowd we were with, one guy was going ballistic.
Oh, he was like flipping out. I thought he was going to just hit the ceiling at some point. He was screaming into the microphone.
Yeah, but I mean, it was. I was having fun. I really enjoyed what I got. I mean, it's the Modern Warfare you know and love from back in the day.
And your kill to death ratio was what, like 12?
12, but I was just sat in the corner.
Okay, well, so you were number one. I came in third, but whatever.
Yeah.
You know, what can you do? It's like
I'm not too proud of this. But
I haven't played that much of the game, honestly, in a long time.
Yeah, it is.
Not that most people have, right? But still.
It's interesting to know, actually, the Infinite Warfare map we tried was from Modern Warfare 2.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Was it Terminal?
Terminal.
Yeah, it was Terminal. They remade it. It's like a space version.
Yeah, it's the multiplayer map that was plucked from the No Russian Mission, the controversial one from back in the day. And I was playing it and I was thinking, this feels really familiar, but they completely revamped everything. Looked good, very shiny, very spacey, sci-fi.
So, I mean, I think that's kind of Call of Duty, right, for us.
Yeah.
So the takeaway from the PS4 Pro at this point for us is it's more convincing than I expected, maybe for you as well. When you're not moving, it looks native 4K. When you are moving, it's obviously less so, but from a normal viewing distance, even like 3 to 4 feet away from the screen, it becomes a lot harder to see when your pixel density is that high. So I don't think this is not a typical 900p to 1080p situation. It is, when you're dealing with pixel counts this high, it becomes less of an issue. And also because the upscaling algorithms that they're using produce sharp pixels instead of really blurry pixels, at least in this case. Plus, I mean, it really did feel like a significant jump forward for the console, and I'm very curious to see how this impacts other games.
So I have a bit of concern about this. I've spoken to you about this before. The tactic adopted by Activision with Infinite Warfare in adopting PS4 Pro here is basically to bump the resolution up and keep the original game assets and effects pretty much as is, visibly as is.
That's kind of what we're expecting.
Yeah, but that's not always the case, as we've seen with the promises for Rise of the Tomb Raider.
Right.
My suspicion is we're going to see a lot of games which simply go for this easy route here, just sort of like, we don't have the resources to pump into a 4K version, especially for a game already in development.
And they may not even have the technical resources to do it. Like the memory, you have the same memory limitations as before, but now you're running it at higher resolution, so you can't be expecting super high resolution textures now to match the increased resolution, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Scorpio is going to have upgraded memory. It has increased memory bandwidth. Albert Pinello has even confirmed that, and we can see from the various diagrams and I guess the motherboard shots, it looks like 12 gigabytes, something like that. So it's not for certain, but it does seem like it's going to offer more memory and more memory bandwidth. So on the PS4 Pro, it really does seem like it's going to be just PS4 games running at a, not quite, but close to 4K resolution. That looks convincingly 4K.
Yeah, I think that conformist tactic, keeping it in line with the last model, might pay off for Sony in terms of keeping things simple for developers as they go forward.
We'll see how it pans out.
It's a straightforward
process.
It's pretty simple. But for the near term, I think we're going to see a lot of pro versions in the vein of Call of Duty like this, and we're going to see the remastered Modern Warfare as well on Pro as well.
That's going to be there.
And I imagine it. I mean, I hope we see something more, but I imagine it will be the resolution bump there as well. In the near term, that's probably what we can expect from the console, but in the future, maybe more like Rise of the Tomb Raider, more
options. We'll see.
Which is good for everyone.
That'd be great. That'll help everyone, including 1080p users, which I think, again, with downsampling, it should be pretty good.
What else did we see at the show?
I think one of the next things we checked out was Gears of War 4.
Yeah, so we had a look at the PC version here. It was running on a GTX 1080.
That's right. So this is the first time I think any of us have actually had a hands-on with the PC version, right?
I believe so. You played it on the Xbox One S, or at least saw it running on Xbox One S.
I saw it running on PC and Xbox One X back at E3. and I've played the beta, which was a long time ago, but this was the first time I actually sat down, played a demo level of the campaign. Even though the game just went gold this past week, we were actually just playing a demo. But it was running on a PC with a GTX 1080, and what CPU was in there, do you remember?
Skylake 6600.
6600.
Yeah.
So, and I guess the main thing here is that they were showcasing this game also running at native 4K on the PC, of course.
Yeah, we were looking at it and saying the frame rate's really low on this. Wonder what's going wrong. And it's like, oh, 4K, fine.
Yeah.
Fair play. Yeah.
I mean, really low. I guess so. It was kind of, I'd say it was between 30 to 45 frames per second, which for PC is kind of low. But
it's the cadence, sort of uneven cadence.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not sure exactly what it is, but it was wasn't enough to hit 60. But I suspect we'll confirm the 30 FPS cap is in there.
Yeah, that's in there. But also, what we didn't really get to play with is we did confirm that they have sort of the dynamic resolution adjustment feature in the game.
In the options, yeah.
It was in the options menu, and it was turned on, but the slider, I think, was set all the way up, so there wasn't much variance. But theoretically, that should allow
some wiggle room.
Some wiggle room there. So hopefully, when your GPU is under load, it will drop the resolution, go back up, depending on what's happening. That actually seems like a pretty good solution, I think, if you want to be able to max out your image quality whenever possible, right?
Yeah, in a kind of phase where we're approaching the 4K.
Right, as we were saying
standard.
before, when you're sitting back a little bit anyway. I guess on a monitor, maybe it's different, of course, but still a little bit of drop in clarity while the action heats up, not a big deal.
So I didn't realize this, but it was set to the lowest number, I think one of the lowest end of the spectrum. It's like 10, and I didn't notice any drop in clarity on my image.
It didn't. I think it was basically locked at 4K.
Yeah, so I was fairly happy with what I saw overall.
And the game looked great, actually, on there. It was really beautiful.
Well, I think the two things it's pushing for are in Unreal Engine 4's lighting.
Yep.
And the sort of weather effects.
The weather and physics, right? And I think this is, as we kind of learned, it's a very artist-controlled feature that they've implemented here, which enables them to be very free with how strong the wind is, or how much rain is happening, that sort of thing. And by the way, I noticed the rain droplets on their armor when they would zoom in real close. Like you could actually see the raindrops hitting on the armor and pooling in little beads and running down. It really did look good.
I didn't notice that.
But what I was surprised by was how much the weather actually impacted the gameplay.
They're not gimmicks. They're actually integral to the way each of these levels played. I've forgotten what this segment was called, but it was like running towards a sort of sanctuary, a building
and
at the end.
I think they've shown this in video before, but actually playing it really made me realize what it was all about.
Yeah, so, I mean, we remember the sort of meat physics of the Unreal Engine.
The meat cube.
Meat cube, yeah. They had that going on with sort of cover. So if you don't shoot the enemy, you hit like this meat cube cover, and if you explode that, more enemies pop out. So it's like a punishment if you don't actually nail your shot.
And they were weaker enemies, but it was kind of like they would kind of rush you, and it
bit of a nuisance.
The game actually felt really fast-paced in a way that's a little different for Gears, and I really liked it. Like it really kept you on your toes. Enemies were coming hard on the player, and it felt great. And then when the weather kicked in, as you get further, the rain and the wind was picking up gradually, and it actually got harder to run. Like when you're running, your guy was fighting against the wind, and like you could actually blow apart cover that the enemy was using, and they could do to you as well. And that would actually cause large objects to go flying across the screen and sometimes hit and collide with the enemies, which would wipe them out. And it made this very active battlefield. I also noticed if you throw your grenade, for instance, it would actually arc with the wind.
They're
so
pretty ineffective. You had to go running
change your tactics a lot, and it was very, very impressive looking, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, there was a lot of sort of dynamics being used, like it's not like an obstacle course. They had like lightning sort of searing the floor, and you had to dodge the lightning.
Oh yeah, you had to dodge that. That was cool.
And the whole sort of run of it just sort of was a nutshell demonstration of what they were going for in this game. And I left kind of impressed by the visual direction and the meshing between that and the technology they were using, because they're clearly very proud of the tech that they've got to work with.
And I guess the one complaint I have is, for the most part, I believe what we've heard from the developer is that they are actually going for real-time cutscenes But at the end of the demo, the final cutscene was actually just a video.
Yeah, I noticed the compression on that, and it was a little bit choppy as well.
Yeah, that was odd. It was not, the video did not look great.
So maybe it was down to being an early build.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know the situation on that.
Yeah.
And again, for the most part, they've told us that most cutscenes will be real time, with a few videos, used throughout, which is exactly how Gears of War 1 and 2 and all them functioned, right?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, in the settings menu, there's an advanced setting, and it has clearly listed real-time cutscenes, and the toggles for that are all sort of, there's numerous.
There's a lot. There was a huge, how many settings menus were there? They're like 4?
Yeah, it was
like 4 pages. It was ridiculous.
As I say, they're going all in with what they got to show on this. Also, we didn't get a confirm as to whether the PC version will get HDR support.
Yeah, we asked about that, and they didn't, based on his face especially, it really didn't seem like they had necessarily, that was going to be something that would happen anytime soon. Maybe, and this was not a technical guy that we were talking to either, so...
Yeah, different department.
Different department, so we'll see. It would be very nice to see this with HDR support, because we know the PC obviously does support it. But, I mean, that's pretty much Gears for now, right? I mean, comes out in, 2 weeks or so? So it's just around the corner.
Yeah.
But, so what else did you... what caught your fancy at the show besides Gears 4 and the Call of Duty stuff?
That's a good question. I mean, we saw a couple of things. We saw Sonic Mania. Which
I think we both wanted to get hands-on with that.
Yeah, that was pretty much one of our first picks for when I was like, we've got to go to Sonic Mania and see this. Obviously, it's a completely different kettle of fish compared to the top-end AAA stuff we're usually focusing on.
And it's not really like a tech powerhouse, but I do think that there's an impressive engine behind
There's
this.
a bit of ingenuity to Christian Whitehead's approach to this, and recreating the kind of physics properties of Sonic as he weaves around and all the power-ups he has. One of the things that really stood out to me there was using the kind of bubble power-up, the water one, where you can bounce. And I was having a lot of fun with that, just sort of bouncing down the arc and seeing a huge speed boost from that and then bouncing right back up again.
Plus there was I felt like the acceleration, momentum, and the physics are spot on. I mean, I started with the Green Hill Zone remake thing where it's kind of deviates into something else, and it felt exactly how the actual Mega Drive game feels. Like, it was spot on.
It's been a long time coming as well.
Very subtle differences, but in terms of just animation frames, but the actual way he reacted down the hills and shoot off. If you go down a curve like this and hold down on the D-pad, it accelerates exactly as you'd expect. It felt just right.
Yeah, there's no Sonic, was it the Dimps created Sonics?
No, the Dimps games didn't quite nail that. But I mean, that was one of the platform games that we saw.
You saw Ukulele?
Yeah, I finally got to play Ukulele on the PC right now, actually it was.
Yeah, and as ever, it's hard to really criticize the premise of this game. It's a fairly earnest attempt to revive the 3D platformer that's been absent pretty much all generation.
It's very much, to me, it really did feel like Banjo-Kazooie 3 with different characters. And there was a lot of elements from that game here. But of course, I was very impressed with the actual look of the game.
Yeah,
like the world is...
What is it, Unity based?
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that it's Unity, mainly for the console ports. We'll see how that goes. These guys know game development though, right? Like, you can do good stuff with Unity. We've seen it time and time again. So I at least have a lot more confidence here than in some other situations. I think that hopefully they'll do a really nice job here. We'll see.
Well, it was interesting to hear that the PS4 port was being handled a little differently to the PC, and getting a lot of help from Sony on that. And
we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah,
but I think the main takeaway is just from a gameplay perspective. Really, for me, it was a lot of fun. The control of the characters felt really good. The game world looked fantastic. It had a nice sense of exploration. I mean, there was the classic moment where you basically climb up a large obstacle course style mountain, where you're like having to dodge things and you platform all over the place. It got trickier and trickier the higher you get, and then you reach the top and there's one of the book pages, which is the equivalent of like a puzzle piece or a Mario 64 star. And it was just that classic design, feeling that again in 2016. I think it has a lot of potential.
So there was another game we checked out right next to that. It was Mantis Burn Racing.
Oh yeah, Mantis Burn Racing, which kind of came into the spotlight recently because it's one of at this point, as far as we know, it's the only truly native 4K 60 frames per second game coming to the PlayStation 4 Pro. They didn't have the PS4 Pro version there, unfortunately. They couldn't get their hands on the system to bring to the show, but we did play it.
Yeah, and looking at the PC version, it's kind of clear why a game like that would lend itself to 4K and sort of the pixel clarity from a distance up high, looking down at these cars. It's appreciable in much the same way as a sports broadcaster being heavily used to push forward 4K as they did with full HD, because it's all top down and you need to see that granular detail. And
there was a lot of detail actually in the scene. It was very nice looking environments, really good shadow usage, and like a nice bokeh depth of field blur to give it a little bit of a tilt shift look at points.
And really the camera was quite logical. I was looking at the way it was working around to give you the best point of view. The physics actually looks really like they were working well.
Really, really good. Like I was doing a time trial thing trying to beat one of the times set, and I got super close, but by the end it just really felt like you were carving up the turns of this track really well, and every corner was interesting. And this was not a game on my radar, but I walked away actually really impressed, and I guess it's kind of weird because it was the PS4 Pro stuff that triggered that. But what we did learn though is basically one of the designers working on the game was actually an ex-Rare guy who worked at Rare for many, many years. So the Ukulele, the Mantis Burn Racing connection, you can see where these guys have kind of gone off to, and it's great to see that they're still
it's good to see
making good games like this, working on
thriving.
Stuff.
Yeah, I just wonder how it will hold up, because we're promised, was it 60 FPS with 4K?
Yep.
And I mean, that's quite a task. I mean, not many games, I don't think any I'm aware of is going for that right now.
This game also runs on its own engine, you know, which is kind of neat.
Yes, there's no middleware involved. I guess it helps to cut out the middleman and just
exactly.
Build it up from the ground.
That's cool stuff.
Anyway, I suppose that's a good enough place to leave it.
Yep, I think so.
So that's just a summary of our thoughts from EGX 2016. I hope you enjoyed our little chat here. With that, we'll see more PS4 Pro down the line, and we'll give you the news as and when we get it.
And if you like this weird little experiment video that we did, be sure to let us know, and we'll take it from there. But if you did enjoy this video, as always, be sure to like it and subscribe.
And until next time, see you soon.
See you soon.